be starting with Dr. Ragan Adams. Again, as she said, she is our CSU Veterinary Extension Specialist. So we are very lucky to have her within Extension to keep us up to date on things just like RHDV2 that we're having with our different species and everything like that. She keeps all us agents in line and in the loop. And
never
then, yeah, in line. And then after Dr. Adams has concluded her presentation and taken what questions you guys have, then we will roll into, we have Miss Rosie Scanlon and Miss Rita Lipke. They are two rabbit leaders from our Adams County 4-H program. They're also our Adams County Fair rabbit superintendents, and they're both rabbit producers themselves. So they're going to be talking to us about general health care for our rabbits, as well as some first aid practices. And I will say we do have, I know in attendance, one of our KV leaders as well, and she did mention that a lot of the things that Rosie and Rita might be talking about are similar. So if you have KVs or guinea pigs, you might find some good information there as well. So Rosie and Rita will give a little bit more better introductions of themselves once we're done with Dr. Adams, but kind of how we'll roll tonight, you guys, is please feel free to use the chat to put in any questions that you think of while our presenters are presenting, and then they will take the time as they go along. They'll take pauses, or at the end of their presentations, they'll ask for those questions. So at that time, you can unmute yourself, or I will help communicate the questions that you guys put in the chat. So if you don't want to forget your questions, put it in there and we will get them addressed. And then finally, we are recording this. So what we do strive to have these recordings up on it's ADCO 4-H YouTube page within about a week of these workshops concluding. So if you want to reference anything, if you had friends that missed it, check back in about a week onto our YouTube page and you can see that. And we'll finally follow up with an email tomorrow with Dr. Adams' slides and then a couple of resources from Rosie and Rita that you guys can reference as well. Final plug, there are quite a few more of these in our vet chat series that we're doing. So if you have any other animal species, sheep and goat is the only other one we've done prior to tonight. So keep an eye out, and we've got more coming the rest of the month for some of our other species. So with that, I will stop talking at you guys and I will let Dr. Adams take over. So thank you very much for being here, Dr. Adams. It's all yours.
Certainly, certainly. I think since I introduced myself, we were talking about dinner. And now I see in the chat there is a question about me asking what kind of animals do I treat? And I need to address that because I want you to know that I am not a rabbit specialist. In fact, I had very bad luck. I had very bad luck with rabbits as a child because we also raised large dogs. And I had a younger brother that used to never fasten the rabbits in their hutches carefully. And so we lost a lot of rabbits. And I have a little PTSD about the dogs versus the rabbits. So about the most important thing I can tell you about the health of rabbits is make sure you keep them safe from predators because they don't really have much of a defense system. But what I did when I was in practice was primarily horses. I actually was a large animal, a horse surgeon down in Florida. So I used to work on a lot of fancy race horses. And I also loved to work on baby foals that were sick when they were first born and to get them healthy so that they could become the great athletes that they could. We worked on Western, English, every kind of horse that was available down there, it seemed like. Once I moved to Colorado, I got more involved with cattle. Oh, my phone keeps doing something crazy. Now it's my time to do something crazy. I got more involved with cattle and small ruminants. I have never been a small animal veterinarian, but I don't know, presently I'm down to 3 dogs. So I'm an animal person for sure, but that's about me. What we're gonna do here is an update on this disease, rabbit hemorrhagic disease. It's the one, you know, that we refer to as RHD, and it's the reason they had to have a virtual rabbit show last year. I just am going to give you a bit of an update on it and leave plenty of time so you or your parents can ask questions, because it's a little bit of a difficult topic. So now, why doesn't it want me to? Now it's not letting me. Oh, there we go. There we go. So what we're going to talk tonight about some characteristics of the disease, how tough and strong and hardy that virus that causes the disease is. And then we're going to talk about where the disease is as of the end of December 2020, because it's spread a lot in this last year. And then we're going to talk about what the Colorado State Veterinarian suggests that we do about fairs and shows. I had a nice discussion with him yesterday for about an hour and a half. And then we're going to talk about this magic topic, vaccinations, which everybody seems to talk about. So this is a pretty technical slide, but basically what it emphasizes about the disease, which we're going to call RHD, is that if an animal gets it, they have a 90% chance of dying. And they oftentimes die so fast that you don't even see anything wrong with them. They just look like they're lying there. There's no signs that they've been sick. If they do have signs of sickness, they often die within 3 days of getting the disease. So it's extremely fatal. They die because of the fact that the virus attacks their liver and their spleen, so it can't make the substance that helps their blood clot. So they just bleed out. And a lot of times they'll bleed out inside. So that's why you don't see any outside signs of them being sick. There are a few, maybe 5 to 10% that actually do survive, get the disease, but are survivors. But the trouble with them is they carry the virus for, 6 weeks or so. And that's awful, because then they can infect other rabbits when you're so happy they've gotten well, but in fact, they're still able to infect other rabbits. And then the fourth things that's important to know about this disease is there are asymptomatic carriers. Has anybody heard about another disease that's around these days that has asymptomatic carriers? First of all, does anybody know could anybody tell me what asymptomatic means?
It means that the carrier has the disease, but they don't show symptoms of having the disease.
Well done. And what disease are we living with right now that has asymptomatic carriers?
COVID.
Yep, that's right. Well, RHD does that with rabbits, so it's the same thing. And it's really hard to make a rabbit wear masks. So it is a tough thing that you just have to be very careful, because you could have rabbits that, you could go to a meet or something and have a rabbit that looks perfectly healthy, but is an asymptomatic carrier. So that makes things tough. The virus that causes RHD is what we call a very hardy virus. Now, you guys are good readers. This thing, a lot of times in Colorado, we don't have many viral diseases because the weather, either the sun is so hot that it kills the virus, or the ground is so dry that they die from not having enough fluid, or we get a hard freeze. And those are things that periodically just sort of clean our environment off from viruses. But this virus that causes RHD is exceedingly tough. Look at the things. It can survive for 105 days at 68 degrees, survive just above freezing temperatures for almost a year. It survives freeze and thaw cycles. It can survive being in the heat of 122 for an hour. So the bottom line is, once say an animal dies or spreads the virus around, the normal things in the environment of hot and cold and dry and wet don't kill that virus. So it sits in the environment for a very long time. Does anybody know When you are, I'm trying to think, when you guys work with your animals, you're always told about washing feed bowls and making sure that you don't use the same equipment on each animal. Do you know why that is? Why we want you to make sure your cages are so clean and you don't share bowls and that sort of thing? Does anybody know why?
To avoid illness.
Infections.
I saw somebody put their hand up, but I only see 4 people at a time. So Elena, did you put your hand up? I really appreciate that.
Yes, I did put my hand up. It's because if you have a disease that's like asymptomatic, like RHDV2, if you have them sharing equipment and stuff like that, then you don't know that it's spreading the disease from one rabbit to another.
That's exactly right. And the thing that virus sits on and gets carried from one rabbit to the next is we call a fomite, Fomite. And that's why you don't ever, if you're working with horses or cattle or something, you never use say a pitchfork with the sick animals and then go and use it with the healthy animals, because that pitchfork can carry the viruses. Or you wash off your boots and you wash your hands after you've been with the sick animals before you work with the healthy animals. So these viruses can hitchhike on fomites, and they can also last in the environment for a very long time. All right, come on. This thing, there we go. So now we want to look at a picture of where the RHD was discovered in Colorado. So I took a screenshot of a map of Colorado, and you can see that a lot of counties have had positive cases of RHD. Now the pink indicates that the cases were in domestic or pet rabbits, and the blue indicates that it was in wild rabbits, and the purple shows that they had cases in wild and in pet rabbits. So you can see right along the Front Range, we've seen a lot of counties have RHD. And you have to remember, because it's in wild animals and also wild rabbits, and also because that the animals die with so little signs of disease, a lot of them are not necessarily tested that may have RHD. So what happens is, once we have in a county, we find out that there is one case of RHD, we imagine that the county has a lot of RHD in it. Do you see what I mean? Because we don't sit there and try to find how many animals have RHD. We just know that RHD has been there. And so we indicate, we color it in on this map. It started in early April in Colorado and has spread to all down in the Southeast, and has spread to all these different counties. It's very interesting as a scientist to look at it and wonder why it doesn't spread like a trail, but just seems to jump from county to county. And that's a question we don't have the answer to. So I don't have a good map of all the places that it is in the United States right now, but the important thing for you to know is there is a big outbreak in Southwest United States, and all these states, Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, Utah, Wyoming, and Mexico, south of the United States, have positive cases of RHD. They all seem to be of the same strain of virus. So they aren't related to an earlier outbreak that had happened in like 2018. So this is a distinct outbreak. You may have heard people talk about in COVID that we had, the one COVID virus identified, and now the scientists are beginning to see the virus changes a little. And so we have a little different strains are popping out. Like people have talked about the strain in Britain, the United Kingdom, that is much more infectious, but causes the same disease, but much more infectious. And we've had a couple of those viruses in the United States. But with RHD to date, the outbreak we're talking about is the same virus that has affected rabbits in all of these states. Recently, we just found a case in Wyoming in wild rabbits in Albany County, which is right north of Fort Collins and the Front Range. That's where Laramie is. So Wyoming now has a case. And a really interesting thing happened, and that is there's one premise in Florida, Lake County, Florida, where about 10 rabbits died of RHD. And for the life of us, the scientists can't figure out how that virus got from, like, you know, Colorado and the Southwest to one place in Florida. So there's two things we're thinking about. One is that it could just be that an RHD virus, different strain popped up, just randomly popped up and affected those rabbits. Or the other thing, and this is a little unnerving, is that rabbitry had bought hay from a feed store, and that hay was grown in Arizona. And there is a possibility, because I said that the virus is so strong and so hardy, that the virus could have hitchhiked on the hay from Arizona to the rabbitry in Florida and infected the rabbits from there. If that's true, then that even shows how strong and hardy the virus is and how easily it can spread. But we will only know that once the scientists do the genetic isolation to figure out whether the virus is a cousin of the virus we have here or the same kind of virus. Yeah, I have a hard time getting my screen. These screens are freezing up. There we go. So anyhow, I told you all that stuff about how hardy the virus is, how easily it spreads, how easily it kills the animals. To tell you the bad news that at this time, Dr. Rohr, who's the state veterinarian, still thinks that rabbit shows and events should be postponed or canceled at this time. And he's very sad about that, but it looks like the efforts that you guys have gone to keep your rabbits safe and away from one another has paid off, in that the disease has spread somewhat slowly, but it's still out there. And the fact this case in Florida, if virus from a rabbit who's sick could hitchhike on hay between the Southwest all the way to Florida and kill rabbits in Florida, makes us even more concerned about how easily the disease spreads. So in his opinion, as of yesterday, he does not feel good about recommending that the rabbit shows and events occur. And that would mean that it wouldn't be good to have your club have in-house, meetings where you bring your rabbits so they can, mingle. And it might change, but that's the way he feels about it right now. So what do you do? But he said he still has quite a lot of suggestions of what you do to keep your rabbits safe. We know that because we know even if the rabbit's at home, it can be exposed to the virus doesn't have to be exposed to another rabbit to get sick. So this is a list up here of really good biosecurity that you should, protocols that you should do with your rabbits to make sure they don't get sick. And I mean, this is worse than you guys not getting to go to school. They think your rabbit should stay indoors, have no playtime outdoors, and shouldn't mix with other rabbits outside your home. We know how hard this is because some of us have had to do it this year. Always make sure that you wash your hand before and after handling your rabbits. Change your clothes and wash them twice, because remember how hardy I said it was? If you've come in contact with other rabbits, leave your shoes outside your house. Disinfect the objects so that they can't be, because they may be contaminated, that hitchhiker roll. Sometimes mosquitoes and flies can be infected with the disease, so you want to make sure that the rabbits aren't exposed to any of them. That probably wouldn't be happening now at this time of year, but it will in the summer. And now they've included this thing about making sure that your hay, feed, and any greens you give them have been, weren't grown in the area where there was an outbreak. They don't want you to let them just go eat grasses and plants outside because they may be infected with it. If a new rabbit comes to your house, you want to quarantine it and keep it completely separate from your other rabbit. And also remember not to use the same instruments with one rabbit or another. So that's got to be a strict quarantine. They also, your cats and dogs that have been outside could brush against things and get virus on them. So you got to make sure that they don't contaminate your rabbit. And I thought this was an interesting recommendation. They suggest that you learn to trim your rabbit's nails and groom them at home so that you don't take them to a groomer or a vet's office and risk them being exposed. And then there's flea treatment that they feel you should use. So these are some recommendations. They'll be in my, they're in the PowerPoint. Do they make sense to you? I mean, they seem pretty harsh. Do you have questions about them? I can't see hands up. So if anybody's hands upping it, they need to just talk out.
We do have some questions in the chat. I don't think they're necessarily directly related to this list here. So if you'd like, we can just save those till your open questions.
Let's do that. Great. Kelsey, this is so funny.
It does. So it tends to have a delay. I don't know why between the slides. Natasha does have a question that would pertain to this list specifically, and you guys are having great questions. We will get them to the presenters. So even if you think you know the answer, let's go ahead and let our presenters have the chance to answer it. But Natasha's question.
This is my last slide. Let me
absolutely.
And then we'll get to that. That's great. So what everybody talks about, of course, with RHD is that there is a vaccine. Actually, there's 2 places in the world that make a vaccine. One's in France and one's in Spain. But there's nobody in the United States that makes a vaccine. So the way we can get the vaccine is if a state has positive cases of RHD, a licensed veterinarian can apply to the state veterinarian and ask to import X number of vials of the vaccine. The vaccine comes from France, is called Filovac, and it's the one that we're trying to get into the United States because it seems to be very effective to protecting the rabbits against the strain that's in the United States right now. There's another company in Spain called Aravac that makes a vaccine, but that vaccine is against 2 strains that are not in the United States, so that vaccine doesn't work. It is one of these things where you can import the vaccine, but because the USDA, who oversees animal vaccines, has not tested the efficacy, in other words, the effectiveness of the vaccine, has not established a withdrawal time if you're vaccinating meat rabbits, and hasn't done the studies to indicate how often you should vaccinate. All that is based on data in a different country, so they can't ensure that's correct. There is a company that was talking about making a vaccine in the United States, but there's a really interesting thing that happens. If a company puts the money into researching and developing a vaccine, they want to make sure that the demand to vaccinate is high enough so they get their money back, so they make money on it. Because of the fact that people realize, because they're not having a good, their business plan isn't working out well, that they would make money off of this vaccine. And so none of them to date have pursued doing it. But we can get vaccine here. It's just that we kind of can't guarantee how well it's going to work or how often you should vaccinate. So that's a little depressing. But now would be a good time to ask questions, and I see some hands. Which way do you want to do it, Kenzie? Do you want to do them off the chat, or do you want the kids to do them in person?
Let's take care of some of the ones in the chat, and then if the chat slows down, we can have kids unmute themselves.
Perfect.
I do see that Jubilee and Jordan both have their hands up. So we'll get to you guys in just a second. Let me go back to the beginning here. Let's see. And I will say, I do want to give the caveat here because it sounds like we have somebody, at least one person all the way from Oregon, so out of state. So the update that Dr. Adams did give is focused on Colorado. So as far as recommendations in other states, those may be different. So you'll want to talk to your extension agents or your state vet if you live out of state. So let's see here. We had some good chats going on.
I love it.
Question that might be similar to Jordan's, but Lexi had a question saying, I have two females that have lived together for their whole lives. They are sisters, and do we still need to keep them separate? They share food bowls, water bowls, and hay piles.
No, I think if they're, this is very similar to what we've learned about in COVID. They're household members now, right? They're in their pod. So most likely if they go everywhere together, there's no sense in keeping them apart. Okay, so you're like, does that make sense to you? Your two rabbits are part of a pod, part of a household. So keep them together, but don't take, say, one to play with a friend and then bring it back and put it back with the other one. You want them to stay together. Does that make sense?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, super.
All right. Jordan had a question, and you touched on it a little bit, but with the virus, do the rabbits die slowly?
No, they tend to die too fast. I mean, they definitely die quickly. It is usually, as I say, some of them die without even looking like they've been sick, and they just, they're fine in the morning, and you come home at lunch and they're dead. So that's strange. So they bled out rapidly, and some of them take, 2, 3, 4, 5 days to die, but it's not a 2-week chronic kind of disease.
All right, thank you. Hope had a question. Can jackrabbits get it?
They can. They
Yeah.
can. And if you happen to find, when you're walking out in the woods or something, if you happen to find a dead wild rabbit, you don't touch it, but you should call the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the wildlife guys, and report it. And they'll come pick it up and do what we call a necropsy, which is when you do an autopsy on a animal, we call it a necropsy. They'll do that, and they'll take samples to see whether they died of RHD.
Thank you. Lexi had another question. She's asking, in regards to the vaccine, do we know when it is being used? Is it being used yearly, on a yearly basis? Or is it a one and done?
Well, that's what's really interesting, because this the USDA doesn't have, the USDA, the United States Department of Ag, that would oversee a vaccine that was made in this country. We don't know the science, we don't have the data about those other vaccines. All we can do is get the vaccine. The rumor mill, the practice is that it should be an annual vaccination because of information they have over there, but because no company in the United States has evaluated the vaccine, we don't know exactly for sure how long it keeps them immune for.
All right.
That brings up another question. If I don't want to talk too long, but there's always a question about vaccinating meat rabbits. And because what happens with a vaccine is that there oftentimes is what we call a withdrawal time, which means you vaccinate them, but you don't want to eat those rabbits for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. And we don't have the data to tell you how long the withdrawal time is on meat rabbit vaccination. We're assuming it's about what we would do for other vaccines, would be anywhere between 3 weeks and 60 days. But again, we don't have that science in our pocket, so we don't absolutely know. And that's one of the downsides of having to import your vaccine.
All
What else?
right. Mackenzie is asking, can other animals get it?
No, doesn't seem that you get it, that we get it, humans get it, or other animals get it. That's a great question. I should have mentioned that before.
Perfect. I do want to mention, you guys, if you have other animals like cavies or poultry that you use similar or the same cages or supplies with, that could be a concern if you were to go to an event with a cage or something that another rabbit producer is at and you guys handle the different stuff. I know that that was a concern at our county fair with our cavies, because a lot of our families that have rabbits also have cavies. So it did affect our cavie shows. So just keep that in mind. The cavies couldn't get it, but it could hitch a ride on some of their crates. Let's see, Natasha is saying, what if a rabbit is in an outdoor cage? It's surrounded by a second fence, so any wild rabbits can't get nose to nose.
I'll tell you, the recommendation is to keep them inside. And so, I mean, that's a great question, because you wonder whether anything can happen. I think it would be, because of the fact that they have the second fence, I think it would be safer, but it's probably not as safe as keeping them inside. You know, whenever we work with our animals, we always do the best we can. And then sometimes it's not 100%, but it's better than doing nothing. So you kind of have to weigh that. You know, if it's not possible to bring them in, then it's good to do that. But you don't know if viruses, you don't know if a rabbit walked through the leaves near your rabbit hutch, even though we're fences, and those leaves had virus on them and they blew over the fence or through the fence to get into your rabbit hutch. This is such a strong virus that could infect the rabbit. So, we do the best we can.
Jordan has a good question. Are there any concerns with eating meat rabbits if they have it or they've been asymptomatic? Can they still be consumed?
Well, that is a great question. We discuss that a lot. The fact that it does not, two things are in the favor of eating meat rabbits that might have had the disease. One is that the virus doesn't affect people. And two, most of us don't eat rabbit sushi. So we cook the rabbits. And by cooking them, even though, we said how hardy the virus is, most likely the virus would die. So those are two reasons why one would say, I mean, if the animal was really sick, I don't like to eat sick animals because it doesn't feel right. But I can't tell you, tell you that it would be bad for you.
All right. We got quite a few. These guys are coming up with great questions.
They are. I love it. You guys are really here. I love it.
I know. Lexi is wondering, I guess the better question is where she could find the number for the Colorado testing department, or where they can see where their cases are. It sounds like they've had some dead wild rabbits around where they're at.
So on my reference sheet, which is there is a link to the Colorado Department of Ag, and it gives you all that information. It's the RHD, rabbit hemorrhagic disease page for the Colorado Department of Ag, and they will give you all the pictures of where it is, how you find out. They don't tell you exactly, they don't make public exactly the street number of where a positive animal is, because that's private information, but they'll say generally what area in the county the positive case was in. But you can call that, they will have a lot of numbers for you on that. And you can either just Google Colorado Department of Ag RHD V2 and it'll pop you to that page, or I have the link on the last slide of my PowerPoint.
Perfect. Thank you. And you guys, again, I will be sending out, Dr. Adams is sharing these PowerPoint slides with us, so that'll come in an email to you guys tomorrow. Rebecca has some good questions. She's asking, is the vaccine live or killed or is it a live or a killed vaccine? And then will the rabbit shed the virus after being vaccinated?
Rebecca, excellent. It's a killed virus. And that usually most viruses are either made of killed virus, so the virus can't affect you, but it'll stimulate your immune reaction, or like the virus for COVID, it's part of the DNA that tells your immune system or the rabbit's immune system to make antibodies, but it's a killed virus in those two. Will the rabbit shed the virus after being vaccinated? Well, the good news is they could shed it, but it's a killed virus, so that means that it won't infect anything. I don't think they would. Now, I take that back. That was a stupid answer. Because it's a killed virus, it won't replicate in the animal, so they won't be shedding the virus. Was I clear in my second explanation?
I believe, was that right, Rebecca? Is that what you were wondering?
Yes, it was.
Thank you, Rebecca. Great question.
You're welcome.
Right. Mackenzie has, we're getting there. Mackenzie has a question. Where in La Plata County can I vaccinate my rabbits, and will the vaccine make my female infertile?
First of all, I don't have that information. You would have, what you have to do is call veterinarians around in La Plata County and find out if anyone has imported the vaccine and if they have doses for you. It's interesting that a lot of, there was a big push to bring in vaccine last summer because people felt like if you vaccinated, then maybe you'd be able to do your shows, et cetera. But that only works if absolutely everybody vaccinates every rabbit that they're around, right? And so once they started canceling and postponing shows, the interest in vaccination has decreased. And I think that Dr. Rohr said something like he only has had requests from 2 veterinarians to bring in vaccine, and maybe in the last couple of months, so there may not be many vaccines around. But if you're interested in having it vaccinated, you should talk to your veterinarian and see if he or she knows of anybody in the county that has the vaccine. And to our knowledge, we don't think that the vaccination would make the female non-fertile, but certainly we didn't do the science on it. But vaccines don't usually do that. So that would be a low chance, I think. Could the rabbit still qualify as organic? Ooh, wow. I just read ahead. Kara.
I was gonna say, you're right on the next one. I didn't know if you would know that one at all. It's a tough
Well, I
question.
don't, but it's a darn good question. And I actually don't know. I don't know. But do you know, are you an organic rabbit producer, Kara? Okay, somebody.
I would say depending, so Kara, if you are using an official organic label, then you should be able to contact the organization that provides that certification. If you're just claiming organic or free range or whatever, those labels that aren't tied with a certification, then it's less specific. But if your animals, if you are marketing them and their meat with a certification, I would reach out to that organization that provides those certifications. Would probably be the best place to reach out to them and/or.
Very good answer, Kenzie. Very good answer. And I don't know, sometimes the organic rules don't always necessarily make the most, not. They're interesting sometimes, so it's best to find out for sure what it is. Okay, well,
Yeah.
I think this is a good question that Aaron asked about what happens if your rabbit digs out of its pen and sees a wild rabbit. It all depends if the wild rabbit is carrying the disease. It could be nothing, it could be, but that's the way it goes.
You do have one new question from Jordan about concerns with consuming meat rabbits after or if they've been vaccinated.
Certainly. And that the concern there, great question, Jordan, is that the component or the chemical that carries the vaccine, it's called an adjuvant, is the thing that they don't want you to be exposed to. Some of it, in some vaccines, it's got aluminum in it, and in other vaccines, it has other components in it. So that's what is usually determines what we call the withdrawal time. So you vaccinate your animal, and in the case of the French vaccine, they say wait 3 weeks to harvest that rabbit so that you're not exposed to the aluminum adjuvant in it. Does that answer your question? Jordan, you good? Good. Okay.
All right.
Kenzie, I'm very embarrassed because I said I was going to take 15 minutes and I was such a blunder with the slides, I didn't get it. So with that, I should probably turn it over to your,
Absolutely. I think our questions are slowing up, and you guys, we do usually intend these to last about an hour, but our last one with sheep and goats went about an hour and a half. So I do anticipate this one will probably end up with that because you guys end up with such good questions. And then I did blunder a little bit with technology at the beginning. So we are going to go ahead and thank Dr. Adams for all of her help and all of her time for sharing her expertise with us tonight. And we're going to welcome our next two presenters. So Dr. Adams, thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. And on the opening page of my slide, I have my email and my telephone number. So if you have any questions, you guys give me a call and I'll get back to you, okay? Take good care of your rabbits and take good care of you guys. And I'm going to have to leave, I'm afraid. Thank you, Kenzie. I appreciate it. And take good care of those rabbits, guys. You can still have fun without going to a show. I promise.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. Have a wonderful night.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye. All right, you guys. So I am super impressed by all of your questions. It is a hot topic right now. And so it does come with a lot of questions. It's honestly, in my opinion, very similar to COVID. We keep wondering when it's going to let up. And we just have to keep watching the cases, unfortunately. But you guys are doing great with being educated and keeping on top of it by being on this workshop. So just keep checking onto the USDA website or check with your extension agent to see what the year is going to look like for you. So with that, up next, we do have, we're going to move into our animal husbandry, so our general health care for our rabbits, as well as our first aid that Miss Rosie Scanlon and Miss Rita Lipke are going to talk to us about tonight. And so again, Rosie and Rita are both 4-H leaders in Adams County. I know we do have a lot of our Adams County kids on here, so a lot of friendly faces and friendly names. And they're also our superintendents, and they are also producers themselves. So Rosie and Rita, I will go ahead and pass it along to you. I am going to give you the heads up. If earlier was an indication, I may struggle with sharing the 2 documents you sent me, Rosie, because my share screen does not like me once I stop sharing. So I will try to help, but you just let me know what you need, and then I'll keep track of our questions and chats, and whenever you pause or ask for questions, we'll start going through them.
Okay, and that's fine about sharing. You can email it all to the participants later too. And we're going to let Rita go first. She's going to talk just a little bit about biosecurity.
Perfect. Let's see if we can get Rita unmuted here. She's juggling. There we go.
Hello. Hello.
Oh, we got a bit of a, are you on your phone, Rita? I'm gonna mute your computer. There we go. Try again.
Okay.
Okay, I think we have a little less feedback, so we should be good to go. Give that a try.
Do you want me just to switch to the computer to get rid of the feedback?
I think the feedback's only going to be when I'm talking because it's probably coming over your computer or the TV. But when it's just you talking, I don't hear any feedback. So we're good to go.
Okay, because we're hearing it on this side.
Okay.
Take it.
I was going to say, if you turn off if you're on the computer, mute your computer as far as your microphone and the sound it's outputting, and that should help it.
Okay, I got off my phone, Kenzie. Is that better?
Okay. Yep, we're good.
Okay. So this kind of goes along with what Dr. Adams was talking about with the RHD and stuff, and going into the first aid, and that is biosecurity with your rabbits. Okay. Biosecurity is doing everything you can do to try and prevent or lessen the chance of infections or diseases getting into your herds. There's several places you can go to get additional information on biosecurity and the meaning of it. ARBA, which is American Rabbit Breeders Association, the USDA website, Colorado Department of Ag. All of those are really good websites that you can get additional biosecurity information. And just to let everybody know, I'm Rita Lipke. I'm one of the superintendents for Adams County, rabbit superintendent, plus the rabbit leader and a rabbit judging coach. And I have had rabbits for over 40 years. So I've been doing rabbits for a long time. And I showed in 4-H and competed in rabbit judging also. So, some real basic stuff on biosecurity. Don't take your rabbits anywhere, and really try not to bring any new rabbits in. That way you're not even taking the chance of possibly bringing it into your herd. The other thing is we strongly recommend having, this time of year it's hard, but rubber boots and a bucket of disinfectant. And you have those rubber boots, you step in the disinfectant, do your chores, step in the disinfectant, and walk out of the barn. Disinfect your hands, and if you have overalls or something that you can wear over your clothing, and not wear the same clothing throughout all. Does anybody have any questions on the biosecurity? Okay.
Rita, how long would you recommend if you do bring in a new rabbit? And I know right now is a bad time to bring in new rabbits because of RHDV, but if you do bring in a new rabbit during normal times, how long would you recommend putting them like in a quarantine cage away from your other rabbits?
Prior to the RHD, we recommended a quarantine of 2 weeks. If you can do it for a month or longer, it's better, because sometimes some things won't show up right away. So, but a minimum of 2 weeks quarantine. And when you quarantine, make sure that animal is totally separate from the rest of your animals, and always take care of that animal last. Do all of your other chores and then that animal last, so that there isn't the chance of any cross-contamination.
And then also similar to that, if we get back to where we're going to shows, either at county fair or other shows, the rabbits that we're taking to shows, do you recommend quarantining those guys as well after they've gone to their shows and come back home?
You know, prior to RHD, some people did, some people didn't. It just kind of depended on your setup and whether you had that capability. Ideally, it would be best because you have no idea if somebody else at the show has brought something in. So ideally, it would be better, but we also know that that's not always feasible. And good personal hygiene, keeping your hands clean and stuff. That goes along with, you know, trying to prevent or lessen the chance of cross-contamination. Okay, I'll turn it over to Rosie. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rita.
Shouldn't talk about the fall and the kissing.
That was my fault, Rosie. I clicked the wrong person. I accidentally remuted you. There you go.
That's okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Rosie Scanlon, and I am the rabbit co-superintendent for Adams County, co-rabbit judging coach. And I have been doing rabbits technically not as long as Rita has. It started as a 4-H project gone bad, as my friend used to say. And I liked them so much that the children moved away, but the rabbits stayed. So been all over the country to rabbit shows as well as locally. So lots of experience, lots of knowledge. Okay, kids, you want to put up the first slide and I'll just kind of, if you can, if you can't, I will just do the presentation and then you can send it to everybody.
I
If
will
you
give it a
think
try.
that'll
I'm
be
not
that.
gonna promise. Is it the health first aid or is it the first
Yes,
aid
the
kit?
health first aid.
Okay, let me give this a try, you guys. Everybody cross your fingers because my computer does not like me. Are we seeing black or are we seeing a Word document?
There we go. Yay, it worked.
Yay, good job with the fingers, you guys. You bring good luck.
All right, so the best way to treat an illness in your rabbitry is to prevent the illness. And there are things that you can do to maintain good health and prevent illnesses. Good air circulation, proper housing, plenty of fresh water, good nutrition, which most commercial rabbit pellets have are sufficient for good nutrition. Proper feed storage. It doesn't do any good to buy rabbit pellets, no matter how much you pay for them, if you don't store them properly. They need to be stored in as airtight a container as possible that's pest proof, waterproof. Once the bag of feed is open, that feed starts to lose its nutritional value. Rodent control is very important, and particularly, it's always important, but particularly now with the RHD, it's even more important because, as Dr. Adams stated in her presentation, the virus can be carried. It can be carried on the bottom of your shoes. It can be carried on leaves. It can be carried on rodents. Your dog can walk across the pasture where your rabbits are and into your rabbit barn and bring that RHD virus into your barn. So rodent control is always important, but even a little more so now. Good sanitation of your cages and your equipment, and again, biosecurity, like Rita talked about. And there is the link there to the ARBA website. And if you go to the ARBA website, then you can follow the links to the USDA and the Colorado websites to get additional information about biosecurity and where the outbreak is, when the most recent outbreak is. The ARBA website is a real good place to start to look at all those things and then follow the links, and you should be able to find most of the links and information that you need. And then last, about keys to good health is grooming. You want to brush your rabbit's fur particularly when they're molting, because you want to try to help prevent fur blocks. And then you also want to trim your rabbit's toenails, because you don't want them to catch a toenail in the wire on the cage and break a toe or a toenail. And you also don't want them to scratch and have long toenails and damage their fur. Rabbits don't need the typical pet immunizations like cats or dogs do. And for most rabbits, they will never need a trip to the vet. So in caring for your rabbits, you want to check your rabbit often. You want to keep a close eye on them, make sure they're always eating their feed good, drinking their water properly. One of the things that many 4-H owners, or some 4-H owners, have a tendency to do is fill that rabbit hopper or feeder or bowl clear to the top. Well, when you do that, then you don't know how much feed your rabbit is eating every day. So it's very hard for you to tell if that rabbit has gone off feed or not. And going off feed and drinking less water is the first sign or indication that a rabbit is not feeling well. So you always want to keep a close eye on your rabbits, check them over carefully. Diarrhea is another thing that you really need to watch for. When you're checking over your rabbit, you want to make sure they don't have ear mites or crusty ears, crusty scabs in their ears. Check their teeth, check their fur pads. So those are just some of the things that you should be checking your rabbit every day. Or if not every day, at least once a week. In the wintertime, as we all know, if your rabbits are outside, it's a little harder with the weather to keep plenty of fresh water. So you may have to water them a couple of times a day to make sure that they have plenty of water. Because if they don't have plenty of water, they can't eat. If they can't eat properly, then they're not going to get the nutrition that they need, and it makes them much more susceptible to illnesses. So rabbit leaders and rabbit breeders are always valuable resources if you need any information or help. So find a good, in addition to knowing a vet, it's always a good idea to know your rabbit leader or a rabbit breeder that you can call and ask questions. Okay, Kenzie, you want to go to the next one, please? All right, this is a list of some of the things that you might have an issue with a rabbit. The top ones are just general health issues. Like I say, probably one of the most common things is a lack of appetite or no appetite, and then diarrhea. Rabbits with short fur, such as Rex, they have a tendency sometimes to have sore hocks. Of course, malocclusions or wolf teeth are when their teeth don't align properly. Red urine is something that you might see a little more of in the wintertime, and sometimes people think that it's blood, but there's a difference between blood in the urine and red urine. Red urine is when an animal doesn't process the nutrients in the feed correctly, And sometimes it can be from just not getting enough water. Sometimes if you feed a lot of supplements, that might be a little too high in nutritional, in some nutrients, and might cause the red urine. Heat stress in the summertime and rolled eyelids. And then you have the bacterial infections such as abscesses, colds, snuffles, diarrhea. There is a list of all of those: mastitis, nest box eye, foot abscesses, vent disease, and rhineck. External parasites such as ear mites, ear cankers, fur mites, fly strike, ringworm, and warbles. And then internal parasites such as coccidiosis, rhineck, or fur block. Those are all some of the things, probably some of the most common things that you might see in an illness or a disease in a rabbit. All right, Kenzie, next page. So I'll talk just a little bit about some of the most common things and what you can do for them. And of course, it's always better to be prepared for an illness or an injury. And treatment should be done in a systematic manner so that you know what's working and what isn't. For example, if your rabbit goes off of feed, well, don't just take everything that I've got, every suggestion I've got here, and do it all at once. You know, do it systematically so that you know what works. So if your rabbit goes off of feed or it's not drinking water, the most common things are fur block and malocclusion. So of course you want to check the teeth, make sure their teeth are properly aligned. Treat them for a fur block. Give them some mineral oil or petroleum jelly, and then plenty of roughage. Roughage can be grass hay, old-fashioned oatmeal, cereals. You might want to give them some probiotics such as probiosin or Benibac, things like that, and electrolytes in the water such as Gatorade or Pedialyte. And then if they're not eating, you need to get them to eat. So then I have listed several feed supplements that you could give them, and whatever works. If they'll eat a raisin, give them a raisin. If they'll eat bananas, give them bananas. Just get them eating so that you can get that gut flora back working. Another one, very common illness, is diarrhea. Usually what I recommend the first thing I always do is say, give them some hay, give them some old-fashioned oatmeal, some cereal. You need to get the diarrhea stopped, and it may be severe enough that you have to wash their bottom. This time of the year, that's not very good, but you may have to clean their bottom up. Just make sure they're dry before you take them back outside. And then ear mites, ear cankers. If the rabbit has crusty scabs in their ear, you just treat with a little bit of mineral oil on a cotton ball, and that will usually kill the mites. You can do cat ear mite medication, and you can also give them some ivermectin. Then sore hawks, you want to treat with an antibiotic cream or preparation H, and then give them a clean sitting board so they're not sitting on the wire all the time.
Rosie,
Malocclusions are, I'm sorry, what?
can you hear me?
I can now.
Well, I was trying to figure out how to unmute. I want to go back up to when they go off feed real quick. If your rabbit goes
Sure.
off feed and you start giving them supplements, take away almost all of the feed pellets and give them just a little bit so that you know when they start eating again. That's all.
Okay, that's a very valid point, because you do need to know, or just give them a little tiny bit of feed. Don't give them a whole scoop of food. Okay, so malocclusions or wolf teeth. Unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot that you can do to cure it. Once in a while, you'll have a rabbit that the bottom jaw develops at a faster rate than the top jaw, and they might grow out of it, but you just have to watch the teeth very closely and trim them regularly so that they can eat properly and so the teeth don't get too long. We already talked about red urine. And then heat stress for the summertime. If your rabbit gets too hot, heat is terrible for rabbits. Heat is almost worse than cold. You need to get that rabbit into a cool place, put it in ice, put frozen water bottles with it. A good thing to do if you have one or two rabbits or a few rabbits and they're outside in the summertime, take 2-liter bottles and freeze them and then put them in the cages, or even milk jugs and put them in the cages. And then when it gets really hot, the rabbit can lay against those water bottles and help keep them cool. Okay, next page.
Rosie, can I ask a quick question, a follow-up on a little bit of this?
Sure.
When
Sure.
you are talking about treating like a fur block with mineral oil or diarrhea with Pepto-Bismol, how are you administering that? Is it like a free choice, or are you using a syringe? And then should members be contacting their vet on how much they should give, or is there kind of a generic, per pound, how much should they know to give?
I believe on the first aid kit, the other handout, there's a little more specifics as to the amount. The mineral oil is administered with a syringe, and typically about 3 cc's of mineral oil orally is kind of a good guideline. Of course, the other side of that you have to remember is that most of my rabbits are large rabbits.
Yeah.
So, you may not want to give them a whole 3 cc's of mineral oil. And for the kaopectate or the Pepto-Bismol, I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure it's on that first aid. It is oral. And I'm pretty sure it's on the first aid handout, the first aid kit handout that tells how much. I don't have
Okay.
that with me.
Okay.
I didn't print that off, so.
Can you
Okay.
hear me again?
Yep.
Yes,
So on the mineral oil, it's about 3 cc's, but you want to do it for about 3 days. So you don't just give it to them once and call it good. It's for about 3 days. And what we do on the smaller rabbits is I'll give them about 1.5 cc's. A medium-sized rabbit, about 9 to 10 pound rabbit, 3 cc's. And on the French lops, I'll actually give them 4 to 5 cc's for 3 days, at least 3 days. And then the Pepto-Bismol is a quarter of a teaspoon.
okay. The other thing that's very important for fur block is that in addition to the mineral oil, you have to give them roughage. If you only do one and not the other, you're not giving them the complete treatment. Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I think we're ready to move on to the next one. So this list is just some of you may have only 1 or 2 rabbits, and some of the things that are on the first aid handout that we can bring up on the screen. But there are a lot of things that you might have at home that you can use in a pinch, okay? Or rather than go out, if you have other animals and you have large livestock, you might have a jar of Furacin, or you might have probiotics. But if you don't, there's other things you can use. So this is some things that you may have around the house or that are easily able to purchase over the counter. a toenail clippers. Every person that owns a rabbit should have a toenail clippers. Now, if you have small rabbits, you might be able to use your own, by your own personal, like a personal toenail clipper, and clip the rabbit's toenails with that. If you have something like a French, I certainly don't recommend a person's toenail clippers, but a regular dog clippers, toenail clippers works fine. But every rabbit owner should own a toenail clippers and know how to clip their rabbit's toenails. Visine or some general over-the-counter eye wash. And in some cases I have put brand names, but you wouldn't have to buy the brand names. You could buy a generic or whatever. An eye wash in case the rabbit's eyes get matted or whatever. Mineral oil, as we talked about, for ear mites and fur block. Neosporin. You want some kind of an antibody ointment for treating cut, just a multitude of incidences you can use a triple antibiotic oatmeal for. Blue coat is good to have. It helps prevent, if your rabbit gets injured and it's in the summertime and you need to keep the flies off of it, blue coat is really a good medication to use to keep those flies off. Blood stop is always nice to have if you happen to clip toenails and you clip them too short. Blood stop's nice to have, but there are other things you can use. You can use flour, you can use cornstarch. If you have to, you can use sugar, you can use coffee creamer. So if you don't want to buy blood stop, or you can't buy blood stop because you can't find it, then those are other substitutions that will work. Electrolytes, you can buy electrolytes, you can buy electrolyte powder, or you can buy a bottle of Gatorade, or you can buy powdered Gatorade. And then if your rabbit is not drinking water or goes off feed, you know, if you keep a bottle of Gatorade and you keep it sealed, it'll keep quite a while until you need it. The bad thing about Pedialyte is once you open it, it has to be used very quickly. It doesn't have a very long shelf life once it's been opened. And then microbiome, I can never pronounce that word. Probiosin, Bennyback, Ensure or yogurt. Feeding Ensure or yogurt typically has to be done via a syringe. Now, some people's rabbits will eat it. I've never been fortunate enough to get them to eat it on their own. I've always had to force feed them. But that puts their floral back in their stomach so that they start eating again. Okay. Then for roughage, grass hay is always good to have. I thought it was very interesting what Dr. Adams said about the potential that the grass hay from Arizona is what caused the outbreak of RHD in Florida. I found that very interesting. Old-fashioned oatmeal, you can always get old-fashioned oatmeal at the store, or cereal, Cheerios, shredded wheat, anything for roughage. Additional feed supplements that you might want to keep on hand is animal crackers, tropical trail mix, papaya. There's a whole list of things. Those are all things that when your rabbit goes off feed, try whatever you can to get them eat. My personal favorites are probably tropical trail mix, spinach, and parsley, and raisins. Now that's what my rabbits like the best. And of course, you never want to feed a rabbit anything from the cabbage family. No cabbage, no broccoli, no cauliflower, none of those types of products. It forms gases and rabbits don't have a way to pass gas. And then it's good to, if you need to worm an animal, a rabbit, you can always use horse ivermectin for wormer. And you just take a little teeny tiny, about this, depending on the size of the rabbit, and you just take a little tiny bit and give to your rabbit for worm. And yes, iceberg lettuce is not good for rabbits. It has no nutritional value. But if you're trying to get a rabbit to eat, if you can at least get it to start eating some iceberg lettuce to get it to start eating. I always tell people, if you want to give it iceberg lettuce, you only give it in dire emergencies, and you give them a piece about the size of a quarter. Because a rabbit can literally starve to death if you give it too much iceberg lettuce, because it has no nutritional value. Okay, if you want to put up the last first aid kit, I'm not really going to go over it. I'm going to turn it over for questions, but just so the kids can kind of see what it looks like. Okay, so Kinsey will email everybody this little first aid kit handout flyer, and it has a lot of what we talked about and some additional information that I hope you will find useful and beneficial and helpful. So I guess I will turn it over for questions.
Rita has been kind of manning our questions pretty good in the chat, so I don't think we have a ton left over there. I will say there was a question from Grace on Rhineck that it sounds like we need some more information on. So Grace, if you're still with us and want to give us some more information, maybe Rosie and Rita can help you out a little bit with that.
Kinsey, I'm working privately with her on that right now. So
Perfect. Perfect.
Rhineck is something that is a little bit more, requires a little bit more treatment. One of the other things to note that I didn't mention is that sometimes many different ailments can show the same symptoms. So sometimes it's a little hard to diagnose exactly what the problem might be.
All right, Tessa does have a question. Tessa's question is, what vegetables should a rabbit get every day to get all the nutrition they need?
My personal opinion is none. Rabbits do not need, if you are feeding a good pelleted rabbit food, they do not need vegetables. Now, if you're talking guinea pigs, you're talking a different story. But rabbits do not require vegetables to get nutrients if you are feeding a good pelleted rabbit food.
All right. Let's see. Savannah and Dakota are asking, would it be recommended to postpone purchasing a new rabbit at this time, or is it okay with proper quarantine?
Again, I would strongly discourage anyone from purchasing rabbits right now. And some breeders are selling rabbits, but many breeders are not selling rabbits. You know, this RHDV2 thing is just, even if you quarantined, you saw the length of time those viruses can live. That, I don't remember the specifics, but I think it's like 225 days at 39 degrees. Well, that's where we're at right now, guys. That's a long time. That's like 8 months, just off the top of my head. That's a really long time. Now, admittedly, if the rabbit has it, it's probably going to pass within 3 weeks, and they die quite quickly with it or from it. But you are taking a chance of bringing something into your herd. And is it really worth it? Do you really need a rabbit that bad right now? I guess it's a personal choice, but I would say no.
All right, in case, I'm just going to verbalize, because Rita did answer this question. Jordan was asking if you can use vegetables as treats. And Rita's answers was, yes, you can feed as treat in small quantities. So I just wanted to verbalize that in case we've got people not on the chat. Tessa has another question. Do you have any recommendations of how to put weight on a senior rabbit?
If you have a senior rabbit, okay, how much of a senior is it? I mean, is it like 8 to 10 months of a senior, or is it 1.5 years to senior? Because Rita's correct. It could possibly be that the rabbit does not have the bone structure to carry the weight required for it to meet minimum senior weight requirements. Now, sometimes a rabbit that has recently turned senior age, so we'll say 6 months or 8 months, there may be a few months in there where they just haven't developed enough to get to that senior weight. And if you give them a few more months to grow, then they will put that weight on themselves. But the important thing to remember is bone structure.
Rosie, Tessa says he's a 6-year-old Holland Lop who weighs about 2 pounds.
If it's 6 years old, well, at 6 years old, it's past its prime. And it could now be, it is a very definitely a senior rabbit, and it could be losing weight simply due to the fact that it's very old.
Is there like specific feed? Because I know like in horses, typically we can try things like beet pulp and everything that are a little easier to digest, those types of things that are a little bit better for geriatric rabbits, or is it just getting by with what you can?
Mostly getting by with what you can. You can, bananas will typically put weight on rabbits. That's one of the things. There isn't a feed formulated specifically for senior rabbits, but you could give them a little more supplements. You can give them calf manna, but you have to be very, very careful. Calf manna is very hot and very high. And if you give them too much calf manna, they can get diarrhea, and you can also burn the weight off of them. So you have to be very careful giving them calf manna. But you can give them a little bit of an apple. You can give them a little piece of banana, some of those kinds of things. But again, anytime you do any of that, you have to be very careful, because you don't want to overdo it and cause them to have diarrhea. So rolled oats is good, hay is good, it helps with digestion.
Rosie,
those
I guess,
are some
can I
ideas.
ask a question just from you mentioning the diarrhea and kind of what I've seen you mention to our other 4-Hers at other events? If you've got a kiddo with a rabbit that kind of has constant diarrhea, and obviously you've talked on how to treat that, but is diet the first thing they should be looking at when you're talking about those hot feeds? I guess if it's a chronic type thing, what's the first thing they should be looking at and changing?
If it's a chronic thing, it is probably either feed, and they're feeding too hot a feed, or it could be coccidiosis, and they need to treat for coccidiosis. And if they still have diarrhea after treating for coccidiosis, then it's probably definitely a feed.
And when
problem.
you say hot feed, what does that exactly mean?
They're feeding too high of, I believe it's protein, so, or perhaps they need more roughage. Okay, Rita, do you have some input about hot feed?
I do. Okay, and you're right. A hot feed is really high protein. If your rabbit is chronic diarrhea, if you give any type of supplements, take everything out except the rabbit pellets. and roughage, so hay or oats, and see if the diarrhea starts to clear up. Because a lot of times what happens is people give all kinds of treats and all kinds of supplements, and the rabbit's digestive system cannot digest it properly. Therefore, it can cause the chronic diarrhea.
Perfect, thank you. And then Jordan did have a question that I think somebody answered in the chat, but just to clarify, when we're talking about oats that we're feeding, we're talking about feeding them raw, correct? We're cooking those oats
Correct.
or soaking them?
Yes,
Perfect.
just correct. Old-fashioned rolled oats right out of the box. You don't cook it.
Perfect. And then Harmony has a good question. We'll probably wrap up with just a couple more questions come in. But Harmony's question is, how often do abscesses come back in a rabbit? Because my rabbit had a huge one on her face over the summer.
Mom, do you want me to take that one?
Sure.
Okay. Normally an abscess will not return if it is cleared up. But there's two different things that can cause abscesses. Depending on what caused it is going to depend on whether it is a chronic returning abscess or whether it's you treat it and it's gone and it doesn't come back. Normally an abscess is caused either by sorehawks or they get some type of injury and it gets an infection. Best way to treat it is with antibiotics. I mean, if you're experienced, you lance it and get all pus and stuff out of it. You treat the actual abscess area. We use PNG or peroxide, which I don't like, and you actually flush out the whole abscess area, and then you can keep penicillin G on it and some sort of salve, whether it's a triple antibiotic or furacin or something like that on it. But normally an abscess will not return. Any other comments, Mom?
No, that's good. You're right. If the abscess is truly cleared up and the infection is gone, then it should not come back. If it's coming back, then the cause of the abscess has not been treated and cured.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Well, I am not seeing any more questions coming in the chat. What I am going to do right now, you guys, real quick, because I'm actually remembering it, is I'm going to put a really quick poll up for you guys, for all of our 4-H members and families attending. Literally 3 quick questions to tell us how you think this was, if you guys got anything out of this workshop. But I will wrap up while you guys are answering that poll. And if a few more questions pop in between now and then, we will answer those. But I'm going to go ahead and launch that. So if you guys wouldn't mind going ahead and answering that, it just helps us know whether we should continue to put effort into workshops like these. So we really appreciate your feedback. So with that, I do want to point out, I want to give a big, huge thank you to Miss Rosie and Miss Rita for donating their time tonight and talking with you all. We're very lucky in Adams County to have them as leaders. I do want to point out to all of our 4-Hers on board, obviously your project leaders can be a huge wealth of knowledge. So regardless of what county you guys are in, if you ever have questions about your animals and about your projects, even if you're not sure who project leaders might be, always reach out to your extension agent and they can connect you because they're a wealth of knowledge. They can be a huge, huge help. And they have typically a lot more hands-on experience with the specific species than, for instance, I do. I can't be an expert on absolutely every animal, and I by far am not. So always reach out to get connected with those leaders. And then as well, it's always good, even though Rosie did mention that rarely do rabbits make it into the vet. it is important to have a relationship with a vet so that you can take it in if there's something you're not sure about, or you can give them a call to get clarification on if it's okay or how much you should give something to an animal. So again, your 4-H leaders and your vets are a great resource whenever you're dealing with that. And that's about it, you guys. I really, really hope that we can start seeing each other with rabbit workshops in person soon. I hope the virus, the RHD virus, starts to calm down so that we can start having that programming again. But until then, just keep in the loop with your rabbit leaders and keep taking great care of those rabbits. And is that a rabbit, Rosie?
No, it's a cat, and he's
Cat.
picking on the other cat.
It's the cat. Wonderful. So thank you guys for doing that poll. I'm not seeing anything popping up. So again, I will follow up tomorrow with all of you that registered. You'll get an email from me with the slides and the documents that all our presenters used tonight, so that you can refer to those. And then we should have this recording up on our ADCO 4-H YouTube page within a week. And then just in case the rest of you or any of you have other 4-H species that you are interested in popping on a 4-H vet chat for, we do have this coming Monday, the 18th, we'll have beef. Tuesday, the 19th, we will have one on horse. And then Monday, February 1st, we will have one on swine. We are also going to do one for poultry and one for dog and cat, but we're still hammering out those dates. So I'll include those dates for you guys just as a reminder in that email as well. So with that, I'm so glad you could all join us. I know it ran a little long, but you guys had fantastic questions. So you really did a great job at this workshop. So once again, thank you very much, Rosie and Rita. We really appreciate your time and sharing your expertise with us. And with that, I'll say good night. Everybody have a good night.